16 Steps of Mindfulness Meditation on Breathing as Taught by the Buddha. Welcome back, everyone, to Mind Podcast. The core of Buddhism lies in the enlightenment of the historical Buddha. Over 25 centuries ago, a wandering monk named Gautama recalled an early childhood experience of entering the first jhana state of deep meditation and realized that this was the path to enlightenment. He went to a forest near a great river, sat on a cushion of grass beneath a Bodhi tree, and began to meditate. The meditation method he practiced at that time was mindfulness of breathing, which involves being mindful of the in-breath and the out-breath. Through this meditation, he sequentially attained the jhana states, exited them, and quickly realized profound enlightenment. From that moment on, he was called a Buddha, meaning one who is awakened. The Buddha continued teaching the method of mindfulness of breathing until the end of his earthly life. This method, which led to the enlightenment of the historical Buddha, is a supreme meditation practice. The Buddha passed it down not only to the monastic disciples in monasteries, but also to lay Buddhists in the town marketplaces. This premier meditation method has been transmitted to us today through recorded parts in various sutras, most notably in its complete form in the Anapanasati Sutta, Mindfulness of Breathing Sutra, in the middle-length discourses. There, the Buddha explains that mindfulness meditation on breathing consists of initial preparatory steps, followed by 16 practical steps. Of these, the first 12 steps are instructions for attaining the jhana states. The last 4 steps are guidance on what actions to take after exiting jhana. 16 Steps of Mindfulness Meditation on Breathing, as explained by Ajahn Brahm. 1. Breathing in long, breathing out long. 2. Breathing in short, breathing out short. 3. Experiencing the entire breath. 4. Calming the breath. 5. Experiencing joy along with the breath. 6. Experiencing happiness along with the breath. 7. Experiencing the breath as an object of the mind. 8. Calming the experience of the mind. 9. Experiencing the mind. 10. Clarifying the nimitta, mental image. 11. Sustaining the nimitta. 12. Liberating the mind. 13. Reflecting on impermanence. 14. Reflecting on the fading away of all phenomena. 15. Reflecting on cessation. 16. Reflecting on letting go, on relinquishment. A. Initial preparation. A quiet place. A comfortable seat. The Buddha first taught to find a quiet place where you won't be disturbed by others, by noise, or other distractions, such as mosquito bites. Some teachers claim that you can meditate in noisy places like markets or in a car parked on the street, but such superficial meditation never brings wisdom or enlightenment. The Buddha consistently advised that we need a quiet place to meditate. Some people like to meditate deep in the jungle, where mosquitoes are abundant, or in areas where tigers roam. But that's more about testing one's endurance than achieving the ease and comfort of meditation. The Buddha specifically recommended places like gardens or orchards, similar to the Bodhi Gaya, Bodhi tree site, where the Buddha attained full enlightenment. Next is to sit down in a comfortable seat. You can sit on a meditation cushion, a bench, or a chair, wherever you find comfort. Comfort is essential for breathing meditation, allowing the body to feel comfortable for long periods while sitting. Buddhist meditators don't sit on broken glass or beds of nails. The Buddha himself used a cushion of grass to sit under the historic Bodhi tree. You are also not required to sit cross-legged or maintain a rigidly straight back. From my personal experience, I believe you can successfully meditate in any unorthodox posture as long as it suits you. It is not reasonable to force meditators to sit in a few traditional postures. The purpose of sitting postures is to help you avoid discomfort, enabling you to let go of the body as soon as possible. If the posture does not cause physical discomfort, you can focus entirely on meditation without being distracted by the body. The entire 16-step mindfulness of breathing meditation is best practiced in a sitting posture, just as the Buddha meditated under the Bodhi tree. In the practice of walking meditation, your attention is directed to the footsteps, rather than to the breath. The same applies to standing meditation, where the focus is also on the feet. Beginners who are not yet enlightened and attempt to meditate on the breath in the lying down position often become sleepy shortly thereafter. Therefore, you should learn and practice mindfulness of breathing in a sitting position. as it is the most correct and effective posture. Establishing mindfulness. The Buddha instructed us to establish mindfulness right in front. When the Buddha said, right in front, he did not mean we should establish mindfulness on the tip of the nose, or on the point between the upper lip and nose, or at any particular spot in front of our eyes. The meaning of right in front implies something that is important and needs to be done first. Thus, the key instruction in the initial stage is to establish mindfulness as a priority. Because if you do not have mindfulness, you cannot practice mindfulness of breathing. Here, mindfulness is established by implementing 2 phases, as outlined in Chapter 1. This means you must establish mindfulness through present moment awareness and silent awareness of the present moment. From previous explanations, it's clear that if your mind is preoccupied with thoughts of the past or imaginations about the future, you are not mindful of what is happening in the present moment. Likewise, if you are thinking or simply have mental dialogue, your attention is focused on verbal thought, not on the pure experience of the present moment. However, when you are aware and silently conscious of whatever is happening right now, right in front of your mind, you have established the necessary level of mindfulness to begin mindfulness of breathing meditation. It's always helpful to remember, many meditators hastily jump into mindfulness of breathing without going through the very important initial stage, establishing mindfulness correctly to the necessary degree, which results in them facing difficulties and obstacles. If you are a beginner, do not attempt to shortcut the process. This not only wastes time, but also leads to problems. The problem is that they cannot maintain focus on the breath, and worse, they stubbornly cling to the breath with force of will, which eventually leads to tension. More tension than before they started meditating. Such subjective and careless shortcuts have given Buddhist mindfulness of breathing meditation a bad reputation as ineffective and unachievable. B. 16 Steps of Practice. Steps 1 and 2. Although the Buddha first instructed experiencing long breaths, then short breaths, this does not mean you should control your breath to follow that instruction. Controlling the breath only creates discomfort. The instruction means you simply observe the breath enough to know whether it is long or short. Although not explicitly stated in the sutras, this guidance also suggests that you should observe all breaths that are neither long nor short, those that fall somewhere between. Not just observing long and short breaths and ignoring other types. The reason for this instruction is to give you more to observe, long, short, reducing the monotony of only observing in-breaths and out-breaths. This makes mindfulness of breathing more engaging. For this reason, I sometimes advise my students to observe which breath is longer, the in-breath or the out-breath. Another suggestion is to observe whether the pause between the in-breath and out-breath is as long as the pause between the out-breath and the next in-breath. Notice whether the sensations during the in-breath are similar to those of the out-breath. This serves the same purpose as the Buddha's instruction to observe long and short breaths, providing more details to make mindfulness of the breath less monotonous. Another method at this stage is to create a beautiful story around the in-breath and out-breath. I suggest my students remember that the oxygen, O2, we inhale is released by the surrounding trees, and the carbon dioxide, CO2, we exhale becomes nourishment for those trees. Thus, imagine that we breathe and live thanks to the precious gift of the flowers and trees, and what we exhale is a gift back to the green plants and nature around us. It's such an organic process. Your breath is intricately connected to the lively vegetation around you. This elevated awareness of your breath and the act of breathing makes observing the breath more pleasant. In the forest tradition of Thailand, they incorporate a form of chanting with the breath. As you breathe in, you think or recite bud, and as you breathe out, you think or recite do. Together, this forms the word Buddho, which means Buddha. Once again, this only makes it easier and more enjoyable to observe the breath in the initial stages. And when chanting the name of the Buddha, meditators become more serious and focused, as this chanting reminds them that this meditation method was directly taught by the Buddha and that the meditators are practicing according to the Buddha's path. Step 3. experiencing the entire breath. Actually, according to the sutra and the author, it is experiencing the entire breath, but I temporarily use the word feeling to make it easier to understand, although the terms experiencing or knowing have a more profound and comprehensive meaning. Experiencing the entire process of breathing. Some people mistakenly understand the Pali word kaya here as meaning body, the physical body, and thus believe it means focusing on all sensations of the whole physical body. This is incorrect. The Buddha made it very clear in the Mindfulness of Breathing Sutra that he considered the breathing process as one body among many bodies. Hence, here we can call it the breath body. Moreover, the purpose of the first 12 steps of practice is to gradually simplify the meditation object, rather than expanding or complicating it. Thus, the first 3 steps are a time to increase the sharpness of mindfulness to the point where you can observe each sensation in the process of breathing. You are mindfully aware of the in-breath from the moment it arises out of stillness. You perceive the sensations of the in-breath unfolding moment by moment, reaching its peak, and gradually fading until it completely ceases. You achieve such a level of clarity that you notice the gap between the in-breath and the next out-breath. Your mind focuses like a cat watching a mouse as you wait for the next out-breath to begin. Then you begin observing the initial vibrations of the out-breath. You watch the sensations of the out-breath unfold, change with each moment until it too peaks and gradually fades away back into the empty space of stillness. Then you observe the gap, pause, between the out-breath and the next in-breath. When the observation and experience as described above are repeated breath after breath, you have completed the 3rd step, experiencing the entire in-breath and out-breath. A story to illustrate step 3 from the ancient Indian epic Mahabharata. There is a story in the ancient Indian epic Mahabharata about a master and his 3 disciples, which I'd like to use to explain further the 3rd step of the mindfulness of breathing method. The master, who was teaching the students about meditation, gave them bows and arrows as tools to test their skill and level of understanding after a period of training. He held up a bird, a fake bird, and placed it on a branch of a tree at a distance from where the 3 students stood. It would require an exceptional level of accuracy to hit the bird at that distance. But the master then set an almost impossible challenge for the 3 disciples. I don't want you to hit any part of the bird's body. To pass this test, you must hit exactly the bird's left eye. Each disciple stepped forward to take the test, one by one. When the first disciple aimed, the master asked, "What do you see?" The disciple replied, "I see the entire tree, the branches, and the bird." The master shook his head and said, "You are not ready. Step back." The second disciple stepped forward and the master asked him the same question. The second disciple answered, "I see the branch and the bird sitting on it." The master again shook his head and said, "You are not ready. Step back." Finally, the third disciple stepped forward. When asked the same question, the disciple replied, "I see only the bird's left eye, nothing else." The master smiled and said, "Now you are ready. Shoot." This story reflects the essence of step 3, experiencing the entire breath, which means being fully aware and attentive only to the breath, without any other distractions, just as the third disciple was focused solely on the bird's left eye. "That's the target," said the master as he handed the bow and arrow to his student, instructing him to meditate first, merging his mind with the target, and only then should he shoot. The students were free to meditate and aim for as long as they needed, but before shooting, they had to signal to the master. After 30 minutes, the first student signaled that he was ready to shoot. The master told him to wait a few seconds and then asked, "Do you see the bird on the tree?" Without taking his eyes off the target, the student answered, "Yes, I do." Immediately, the master took back the bow and arrow and said, "You are a foolish student. Go back and learn how to meditate properly." The master then handed the bow and arrow to the second student. After over an hour of meditation and focusing, the second student signaled that he was ready. The master asked, "Do you see the bird on the tree?" The student replied, "Which tree?" The master felt pleased and asked again, "Then do you see the bird?" The student replied, "Yes, I see it." Disappointed, the master took back the bow and arrow and told the second student, "You need to go back and learn how to meditate correctly." Finally, the master gave the bow and arrow to the third student. This student meditated for 2 hours, merging his mind entirely with the target, the left eye of the bird. Then he signaled to the master that he was about to shoot. The master asked, "Do you see the bird on the tree?" The student responded, "Which tree?" The master continued, "Do you see the bird?" The student replied, "Which bird?" Smiling, the master asked, "Then what do you see?" Without taking his eyes off the target, the student immediately responded, "Master, all I see is the left eye of the bird, nothing else." The master shouted, "Excellent, shoot!" And of course, the arrow flew straight into the only target in the student's focused awareness. This story illustrates the third step of mindful breathing, sensing the entire breath. For the third student, he completely focused on the target, which was the bird's left eye, just as one must fully concentrate on the third step of mindful breathing, focusing on the sensation of the entire breath in and out. When you complete this third step, you might ask yourself, "Do you hear any sounds?" You'll answer, "What sound?" "Do you feel your body?" Answer, "What body?" "Then what do you see?" Answer, "I only see the breath happening right here." Excellent. Step 4. Calming the breath. When you have merged with the breath as one, the breath will automatically calm down. Only a slight disturbance may disrupt this calming process. You will naturally experience softer and more delicate sensations in each moment, like a piece of coarse cotton fabric transforming into smooth, cool satin. Or you can assist this transformation only by breaking the inner silence for a few seconds and telling yourself, "Calm, calm, calm." Then return to focusing on the breath and silence. If you skip to step 4 too early, you'll get trapped in the hindrance of drowsiness and dullness. You must catch the wild horse before you can tame it. Similarly, you need to grasp the entirety of the breath, complete step 3, before you can calm the breath. Those meditators who complete step 3 through forced effort will never be able to calm the breath in step 4. They have strained instead of letting go. They have gone against the guidance and will find themselves stuck. When you hold a flower, you must hold it gently. If you squeeze it tightly, it will break and become useless. Delicate objects require a refined touch. To hold on to the breath in mindfulness for many minutes, you need a purified and gentle mind. Concentration is only purified through gentle and persistent letting go. Forced effort or exertion will never achieve this. Trying to make it happen is failure. Only letting go allows it to happen. When a carpenter starts sawing a piece of wood, he may observe the entire saw blade from handle to tip. As he focuses on the blade, his concentration gradually narrows to the point of contact between the blade and the wood. The handle and tip of the saw fade away from his awareness. After a while, all he sees is a single tooth of the saw, right at the point of contact with the wood. The left and right teeth of the saw completely disappear from his perception. He didn't know, and he didn't need to know, whether that saw tooth was at the beginning, the middle, or the end of the saw blade. Such concepts no longer existed. This is an example of the saw blade. Similarly, in step 4, you are only aware of this moment of the breath happening right here. You simply no longer know whether it's an inhale or an exhale, or whether it's at the beginning, middle, or end of the breath. As soon as the breath calms down, your mindfulness becomes more refined, and you only perceive this one moment of the breath. Step 5 and step 6, experiencing joy and happiness with the breath. In step 5 of mindful breathing, you experience joy, piti, along with the breath. And in step 6, you experience happiness, sukha, with the breath. Because joy and happiness are difficult to separate and often arise almost simultaneously, I regard them as one and call them joy, happiness. When your uninterrupted mindfulness causes the breath to calm down, joy and happiness naturally arise like rays of dawn breaking from the horizon in the east. Joy, happiness arises gradually, automatically, because at this point all the mind's energy is focused on the knower and no longer on the doer. In other words, you are not doing anything at all. You are just observing. The sure sign that you are not doing anything is the stillness of the breath. This phenomenon is like early morning when the sun's rays will inevitably shine from the east. It's just a matter of time. Similarly, when you keep the breath calm, sooner or later, joy and happiness will arise in the mind. It's just a matter of time, whether it's sooner or later. The mind's energy pouring into the knower, mindfulness, fills it with abundant energy. This energized mindfulness is what we experience and feel as a form of joy happiness. If you've practiced up to step 4 and continue to maintain uninterrupted mindfulness on each quiet breath but still don't see joy and happiness arising, my advice is, don't worry. Do not let your impatience disrupt the natural process that is happening. If you do anything at this moment, it will only delay or even block the arising of joy and happiness. The best approach is to continue meditating deeply in that uninterrupted and continuous experience of the breath. The question is, are you truly maintaining continuous awareness on the tranquil breath? Or are you experiencing interruptions? Or are there moments where it breaks off? Sometimes your lack of progress is due to not having continuous and uninterrupted mindfulness solely on the breath. Is it that your breath is no longer calming down? If so, perhaps the breath is not yet tranquil enough. If that's the case, you must give it more time. Just give it more time, because this is a natural process that does not depend on your willpower. When mindfulness is effortlessly and calmly settled on the breath without any interruptions, and the sensation of the breath becomes more and more tranquil, the elements of joy and happiness will definitely arise. It's better if you can recognize joy, happiness earlier. To do this, you need to become familiar with what you are looking for. Joy and happiness, arising from tranquility, often manifest in extremely subtle ways. It's like a person who loves loud rock music sitting at a classical concert of Mahler's gentle music and not being able to understand why people pay to listen to this kind of soothing music. Simply put, they just don't get it. Or it's like someone who usually eats at street food stalls, attending a 5-star restaurant for the first time and not liking the fine cuisine there simply because their palate is used to rustic flavors and only knows the taste of simple food. But if you continue practicing meditation more, you will gradually become a connoisseur of these states of joy and happiness in the mind. And naturally, you will recognize the subtle elements of joy and happiness from earlier stages. Then they will become more evident in the later stages. Completing step 5 and step 6 of mindful breathing meditation is exactly like reaching the stage of sustaining complete focus on the beautiful breath. This is stage 5 of my basic meditation method explained in chapters 1 and 2. The beauty of the breath at this level is how I describe the experience of joy and happiness right now. The breath at this stage appears incredibly tranquil and beautiful, more wondrous than even a spring garden or a summer sunset. You may even find yourself wondering if you want to look at anything else. It is truly magnificent. Step 7. Experiencing the breath as an object of the mind. As the breath becomes more beautiful than ever before, joy and happiness grow stronger. And then, the breath you were observing may completely disappear. In part 2, I described how the beautiful breath disappears, leaving behind only the impression of its beauty. This is similar to the story from Wonderland, where the Cheshire Cat gradually vanishes, leaving only its smiling face in Alice's memory. This example is the easiest way to visualize the transition from stage 5 and stage 6, experiencing joy and happiness with the breath, to stage 7, where the breath is only recognized as a mental object of the mind. To clarify this transition, I'd like to reference the Buddha's analysis of mental experiences based on the 6 sense bases: seeing, eye, hearing, ear, smelling, nose, tasting, tongue, touching body, and knowing mind. In the early stages of meditation, the practitioner lets go of seeing, hearing, smelling, and tasting to the extent that these 4 sense bases, eye, ear, nose, tongue, are completely inactive for a period of time. Then, the practitioner continues to let go of most activities of the 5th sense base, touch, and solely focuses on a single sensation of the breath with the body, ignoring all other sensations and perceptions of the body. The 6th sense base, mind, remains active throughout the entire meditation process. The mind is the main focus of meditation. When you move to step 7, you must also deactivate the 5th sense touch, leaving only the 6th sense base, mind, to perceive the breath. From here, you experience the breath with a new sense base, the mind. Imagine an old friend with curly hair and a thick beard who used to dress in simple, shabby clothes. Now that friend has become a Buddhist monk. When you first see him again at the monastery, you might not recognize him with his shaved head and monk's robes. But it's still your friend. He just appears different in outward form, that's all. Similarly, the old friend breath that we used to perceive through the sense of touch, the fifth sense base, is now perceived differently. We usually perceive the breath through its touch on the body, such as at the tip of the nose, inside the nostrils, or through the sensation of expansion and contraction in the abdomen. At step 5 of mindful breathing meditation, the breath transcends the physical world, beyond the fifth sense base, and now the friend breath is only recognized through the sixth sense base, the mind. The breath has become a mental object. Because of this, the Buddha called this the experience of mental formation, chitta sankhara, a mental object. So if the breath almost disappears at this stage, you should trust that this is normal and that you are on the right path. Therefore, you should not disrupt the process by looking around to find the old perception of the breath, i.e., the perception through touch. Instead, do this. When you see the breath almost disappearing, ask yourself, what is left? If you carefully follow these instructions, the breath will only seem to disappear after joy and happiness have already manifested. Therefore, after the breath disappears, only joy and happiness remain. Your mind at this point must be truly pure and calm to recognize this subtle mental object of joy and happiness. But thanks to the familiarity cultivated from long-term practice, the insight wisdom will arise within you, and you will know that in reality, joy and happiness are simply your old friend, the breath. It just has changed into a mental object, appearing differently, that's all. If you cannot maintain this new mental object, it is because the factors of joy and happiness were not sufficiently present in step 5 and step 6. You need to practice until the breath becomes very beautiful, thereby generating multiple levels of joy and happiness, before you can completely deactivate the fifth sense-based touch. If you do this, you will have a stronger and clearer mental object to observe and maintain more easily. This is one way it can happen. However, if you meditate a lot, you will know what you are seeking in step 7, and your mindfulness will become sharper, allowing you to let go of the fifth sense-based touch earlier. As a result, you will become more serene and capable of maintaining the still yet subtle mental object. This is another way it can happen. Step 8. Calming the experience of the mind. One thing that often happens is that in the subsequent stages of this meditation process, the elements of joy and happiness can become exciting, which can disturb the stillness of the mind. For this reason, the Buddha taught step 8, which is calm the experience of the mind regarding the breath. When new meditators, and sometimes even experienced ones, first begin to experience joy and happiness, they often rush to celebrate, saying, "Wow, here it is, it has finally come. How wonderful." And immediately the joy and happiness pack their bags and leave. They become too excited. Movement disturbs stillness. This is one way it can happen. Another scenario is when they become overly excited. Fear arises alongside the joy. Why is this so wonderful for me? I feel scared because I don't deserve such wonderful experiences. And at this moment, joy and happiness also flee. Fear destroys stillness. Be cautious of these two enemies, excitement and fear. Both are movement that disturbs stillness, but both can vanish at this stage. Remember to keep the experience of the mind regarding the breath tranquil. Joy, happiness, and delight arise from calmness, from silence. Maintain the elements that create joy and happiness. Sustain peace and silence. Keep the stillness, otherwise joy will disappear. A famous example from Ajahn Chah about a still pond in the forest helps us better understand what is happening right now. Others have taught and written about this imagery, but not comprehensively. This is how I remember Ajahn Chah's teachings. As he traveled through various forests, which in Thai is called Tudong, he often sought water as evening approached. He needed a water source for bathing. After a day of traveling through the hot forest, sweating a lot, if he didn't bathe in the evening, it would be quite uncomfortable at night. He also needed water to drink. Therefore, he always sought a stream or a clear pond in the forest before dark. Once he found a place, he would set up camp and stay there overnight. Many times, after bathing and drinking water, he would sit in meditation beside the pond. He would sit very still, eyes open, watching the animals come out from the dense forest to drink water and cool off, just like humans. He recounted that he had to remain extremely still because the animals were timid and more afraid of people than of other animals. When they emerged from the bushes, they would look around anxiously to ensure it was safe. If they spotted him, they would flee immediately. However, if he remained completely still, they would not notice him, would not hear him, and would come to the pond to drink water and cool off. Some would even play in the water as if he were invisible. He mentioned that after the familiar animals had disappeared back into the forest, another very strange animal would appear, one he had never seen before. He hadn't even heard it described, and his parents had never spoken of such a creature. But that creature would only appear to drink water when he was absolutely still. This is a fitting example of what occurs during deep meditation. The pond or pool of water symbolizes the mind. In step 8 of mindful breathing, you only need to sit in front of it and observe it. If you interfere or engage in various thoughts, even a little, you will no longer be still. Beautiful creatures, symbolizing nimitta signs and jhana meditation states, will only appear to you when you are absolutely still. If there is any movement or a hint of excitement, wow, they will immediately sense it and disappear back into the deep forest, never to return. Even if you sit very still, if you look at them, they will notice and vanish into the forest. If you are completely and absolutely still, they will not perceive you, and they will come to drink and be at ease right before you. Thus, if you want those creatures to appear, you must be completely still, not moving at all. When you are absolutely silent, no controlling, doing nothing, no bodily movement, no mental movement, nothing at all, then the nimitta will arise. They also look around and smell for movement. If they think there is no one present, they will appear right in front of you. However, if you merely move your eyes, they will disappear immediately. Only when you remain absolutely still will they be there. Initially, ordinary nimitta appears. Then, beautiful nimitta follows, and ultimately, strange and marvelous nimitta arises. These strange and marvelous nimitta are things you do not know the name for, things you have never encountered, things you could never have imagined to be real because they are so unusual, so joyful, and so pure. These are the states of jhana meditation. Ajahn Chah's excellent example serves as a measure of his wisdom and deep understanding of the mind. This is how the mind operates and how it acquires such wisdom. It is truly powerful. The supernormal jhana states can appear if 3 conditions are met. If you generate joy and happiness, if you understand that these states of joy and happiness are the mind experiencing the breath, and if you completely calm the entire process of your observation. Step 9. Experiencing the mind. Step 9 of the Buddha's mindful breathing. Meditation describes a very important entity that visits the calm and silent mind. This strange entity is nimitta. This 9th step is called the step of experiencing the mind. Only at this stage can you truly say that you know about the mind. Many people have theories, doctrines, and ideas about what the mind is, and they even try to test those ideas with scientific equipment. They write many books about the mind, but in reality, only those who practice and experience this 9th step can understand what the mind is. You experience the mind through a nimitta image. Nimitta is actually a reflection of the mind. Remember that the mind is the knower. The mind is the one who knows. But can the knower know itself? The eye sees, but it can also see itself when it looks in a mirror. It sees its reflection. The reflection you see in this meditation practice is the nimitta image. Nimitta is the reflection of the mind. If you look into a clean mirror, free of dust and dirt, you can see your image clearly. Similarly, the practitioner can only see their mind through a nimitta image or a jhana meditation state. When a nimitta appears, it is almost indescribable. Ordinary descriptive language is created from concepts. For example, comparisons. We describe something as hard as a brick or soft as a noodle. But the world of the mind is completely different, and language cannot capture it. After you experience your first nimitta, you may think, what in the world is that? What is it? You know that it is a genuine experience, but you cannot figure out how to accurately describe it. so you are forced to use makeshift and not completely correct comparisons. For instance, you might describe it as a light, as a feeling of joy, as an extraordinary pleasure, or it resembles this, or it resembles that. Oh, it is something like that. But no description is accurate. You know, it's not like your previous experiences. It is entirely different, but you must find some way to describe it to yourself. That's why I often say that sometimes you experience nimitta as a light, sometimes as a feeling, sometimes as something that only you know how it is. Or it could be anything, depending on the individual. In reality, we all experience similar nimitta. However, at this stage, for many meditators, the mind flickers quickly, and nimitta disappears swiftly. This is similar to the animals that appear from the forest. If they smell any movement, they will disappear immediately. On the other hand, some meditators find it very difficult to see nimitta at all. They may have practiced to the stage of calming the beautiful breath, but no nimitta appears. No light appears in the mind. Then, they wonder whether they are practicing correctly. The following example may help alleviate this common concern. One late night, I stepped out of my hut and into the dense darkness of the forest. I had no flashlight. It was so dark that I couldn't see anything. I remained calm and patient. Gradually, my eyes adjusted to the darkness. I began to discern the shapes of the trees, and I could look up to see the stars in the sky, even the Milky Way shimmering brightly on that dark night. The experience of nimitta is similar to this. In a colorless stillness, the breath seems to disappear. Soon afterward, mindfulness begins to acclimate to this new darkness, which is entirely different from the familiar brightness, like in the hut lit by the five senses, and mindfulness starts to perceive the first faint shapes. After a while, beautiful nimitta, bright as stars, may appear, and if the practitioner maintains stillness for a long time, all the most marvelous nimitta will successively manifest, like a full moon shining brightly through the fog of the night sky. Step 10. Clarifying nimitta. There are two drawbacks to nimitta that can hinder the progress of meditation. The first drawback is that nimitta may appear too faint, and the second is that nimitta may be unstable. These are two difficulties that can occur when the practitioner begins to experience nimitta images. To address these two drawbacks, the Buddha taught two additional steps in the mindful breathing meditation. Step 10, clarifying nimitta, and Step 11, maintaining nimitta. The term clarifying is my interpretation of the term abhipamodayam sittam, which literally means infusing joy into the mind or creating joy for the mind. The more joy the mind experiences, the clearer the nimitta becomes. The clearer the nimitta object, the easier it is for you to focus mindfully. To enter the state of jhana meditation, nimitta must be the brightest thing you have ever seen, and it must be extraordinarily beautiful. First, we need to examine why nimitta can appear faint or even contaminated and dirty. You should keep in mind that nimitta is a reflection of the mind. If nimitta is faint, it means your mind is still dull and confused. If nimitta is not pure, it means your mind is still polluted and unclean. This is where accurate perception comes in. There can be no unjust denial here, because you are directly confronted with the true state of your mind. Your appearance in the mirror reflects exactly what you are. If your face has blemishes, then the image in the clear mirror will also reflect that. If you are sad or happy, then the reflected image in the mirror will also appear sad or happy. There can be no denying this. We cannot deny or excuse that the reflected image of the mind, nimitta, is faint and unclean due to external causes, while claiming that our mind is pure and untainted. That is neither logical nor a proper definition of nimitta. At this point, the importance of ethical conduct becomes very clear. If the mind is polluted by unwholesome actions, speech, and thoughts, then nimitta often does not appear. And if it does appear, it is very faint and marred. If this is an issue you are facing, you should spend time practicing ethical conduct to purify your virtue before sitting down to meditate. Always keep your ethics unsullied. Always be mindful of your words. The Buddha taught in essence that if virtue is not purified, then there is no door to purify samadhi concentration. Kind-hearted, compassionate individuals who have genuine faith are said to possess a pure heart or pure mind. In my experience teaching meditation, I find that a general principle is that meditators with a pure heart like this tend to have clear nimitta experiences. Simply because their minds are pure, the nimitta will also be pure and clear. Therefore, in addition to keeping your ethical conduct unsullied, you should also cultivate a pure heart, as mentioned above. However, even some people with such kind hearts may experience faint, dull nimitta. Typically, for individuals like this, the cause is that their mental energy is too low, possibly due to poor health or overexertion, akin to a state of being out of battery. An effective way to avoid this difficulty is to practice some meditation stages to enhance your meditation enthusiasm. For example, you can practice mindfulness of the triple gem, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. You need to focus on the triple gem until your mind is filled with joy and delight. Alternatively, if you are a generous person through giving, you can practice mindfulness of the acts of giving and the merits you have created in the past. This will beautify your heart and enhance your inspiration on your path of practice. The Buddha referred to mindfulness of generous thoughts as kaganasati, the contemplation of generosity. You might also practice loving kindness, metta meditation. Practicing these mindfulness techniques will help make your mind beautiful, relaxed, and increase your energy. When your mental energy has been generated to a certain level of clarity and joy, you can return to the meditation of mindful breathing. Thus far, I have guided you through techniques to clarify nimitta, infusing joy and energy into nimitta, even before you begin practicing mindful breathing meditation. Indeed, these are the most effective techniques. This is solid meditation preparation before encountering nimitta. However, when you encounter faint nimitta during meditation, you need to employ the following 4 strategies. Strategy 1. Focus on the center of the nimitta image. Remember that even a faint nimitta has a brighter center than its periphery. By gently reminding yourself to focus on the center of the nimitta, the brightness in that center will spread outwards. As you continue to focus on the center, you will see that the center becomes brighter than the surrounding area. The method here is to keep focusing on the center, then return to the center again, and continue focusing on the center of the nimitta. Doing so will cause the initially faint nimitta to gradually become incredibly bright. Often, it will continue to explode and shine throughout the path leading to the jhana meditation state. Strategy 2. Sharpen your focus on the present moment. Although mindful awareness of the present moment is already part of the initial preparatory stages before entering mindful breathing, often the focus still dances around the present moment. In my personal experience, a gentle reminder is needed for the mind to focus more sharply on the present moment to clarify mindfulness and thereby clarify nimitta, cleansing any dark spots on it. Strategy 3. Smile at the nimitta. Again, nimitta is the reflection of your mind. Therefore, if the mind smiles at the nimitta, it will smile back. It will brighten up. A lingering trace of ill will, the second hindrance, may also cause the nimitta to become dim. A joyful smile is gentle enough and powerful enough to counter this subtle hindrance. If you do not understand what it means to smile at the nimitta as I describe, then look at yourself in the mirror and smile, maintaining that mood while repeating that welcoming smile in front of the nimitta. In fact, as soon as you smile at your reflection in the mirror, or if you find it difficult to smile, you can actively use 2 fingers to gently push up the corners of your mouth to create a smile. Doing so will naturally make you feel pleasant and lighthearted in some way. Try it, even when you are not meditating. Ordinary intelligent people begin their day and end their day by smiling joyfully at themselves in the mirror. So why can't meditators do the same? Returning to the stage of the beautiful breath. As mentioned earlier, sometimes due to impatience or overconfidence, a meditator does not fully complete the preparatory stages of meditation. As a result, they arrive at nimitta too early, or nimitta appears to them too soon, causing it to be faint and unstable, and they cannot maintain or develop it using any technique. At this point, the best approach is to return to practicing the beautiful breath stage longer and more thoroughly. Even if nimitta appears now, just ignore it and focus back on the experience of the beautiful breath. The goal is to make your mindfulness more stable. Usually, after I practice like this for a while, the nimitta appears brighter and clearer. I continue to ignore it and return to the beautiful breath. The nimitta continues to appear brighter and clearer, but I still keep ignoring it and refocusing on the beautiful breath. I patiently practice this way until a truly radiant nimitta appears. At that point, I shift my mindful awareness and focus on that nimitta and develop it. Thus, the 4 methods mentioned above are the 4 ways to clarify nimitta, 4 ways to polish it, as it is, until it shines, becomes stunning, and radiates brilliance. That is step 10 of the mindful breathing meditation. Step 11, maintaining nimitta. The second drawback of nimitta is its instability. This presents a challenge for advancing further into deeper meditation towards the jhana state. It is not stable. It flickers and disappears quickly. To address this drawback, the Buddha taught step 11 of the mindful breathing meditation. This step is referred to as samadam sittam, which literally means calm the mind with focus, and technically means maintain attention on nimitta. Typically, in the early stages, the first nimitta image appears briefly and then disappears. Or it may flicker within the field of the mind's vision. It is unstable. Let me reiterate, the nimitta image is perceived by the eye of the mind sense, not by our physical eyesight. Only the mind is active. All other senses are turned off. Usually, bright and powerful nimitta lasts longer than faint and weak ones. For this reason, the Buddha taught the step of clarifying nimitta before moving on to the step of maintaining nimitta. Sometimes, simply clarifying or illuminating nimitta is enough to maintain it. The nimitta becomes beautifully bright enough to hold your attention for a longer period. However, note that even clear nimitta can be unstable, so you need to apply the following methods to maintain your focus on nimitta. The insight wisdom that helps me maintain nimitta is the recognition that the nimitta I am seeing in my mind is just a reflection of the knower, the one who is observing. If the knower moves, then the reflected image, the nimitta, also moves. Look in the mirror. If you move, the image in the mirror also moves. As long as you are moving, do not expect to keep the image still by holding the mirror tightly. That approach is irrelevant. The moving entity is the image, even if the mirror remains still. Instead, focus on the knower, the one experiencing this, and make the knower still. When the knower is still, the image of the knower, the nimitta, will also stabilize and remain calm, continuously shining magnificently. Please note again that often fear or excitement can create instability in nimitta. You are reacting too much instead of simply observing passively. Experiencing nimitta for the first time is like encountering a complete stranger. You don't know who they are or how they will behave. But after getting to know them, you feel comfortable like friends. They are good friends, and you feel at ease with them. The initial overreaction disappears. Or, you can compare it to when you were a child learning to ride a bicycle. In the early attempts, you might be like I was as a kid, gripping the handlebars so tightly that my hands turned white, and because I was too tense, I kept falling. After getting many scrapes and bruises from falling, I quickly realized that the more relaxed I was, the easier it was to keep my balance. Similarly, you must learn to stop gripping nimitta tightly. Relax, and you will discover that the less you control, the easier it is to maintain nimitta. Another clever method I practice to cease control is to use the image of driving a car. When a bright nimitta appears, I give it the keys and say, "You drive from here." I entrust it entirely, giving it my full confidence. I truly visualize, contemplate my trust, and pass it to that bright nimitta. I realize that even a slight trace of the doer, the agent, the controlling instinct, still wants to interfere or disrupt everything. Therefore, I use this example to help myself let go of all control and interference in the process. This is where I stop. And when I stop, the nimitta also remains with me. It doesn't move or disappear. After you have maintained nimitta for a while, it becomes even clearer and more powerful. Signs of good nimitta are that they possess the most beautiful colors you have ever seen in your life. For example, when you see a blue nimitta, that blue is the bluest, the most beautiful you can perceive. It is not the ordinary shade of blue you have encountered before. Good nimitta, I should call them useful nimitta, are very stable, almost motionless. When you are experiencing a stable and beautiful nimitta like this, you are standing near the threshold of entering the world of jhana meditation, looking into it. Step 12. Liberating the mind. Step 12 of the mindful breathing meditation is called liberating the mind, vimokayam satam. At this moment, you have an experience that you can describe later in two different ways, depending on your perspective. One way is that you may feel yourself sinking or diving deep into the nimitta. Or, on the other hand, the nimitta with its radiant light and overwhelming sensation completely envelops you. You are not doing anything. It simply happens as a natural result of letting go of all doing, all fabrication, and all intention. You enter the jhana state through liberating the mind. As the Buddha said, jhana states are states of liberation, vimokkha, DN 15:35. Vimokkha is also the term used to describe someone who has just been freed from prison and walks freely. The mind is now free. It is free from the physical body and the five senses. I do not mean that the mind is now drifting outside of bodily experience. You are not anywhere outside of space, because all sensations of space are dependent on the five senses, which are now turned off. At this moment, the mind is completely free from all of that. You no longer feel anything about what is happening to the body. You cannot hear anything, cannot say anything. You are blissful in total mindfulness, and still, steady as a rock. Those are the signs of a liberated mind. This experience is one of the most powerful experiences, possibly the most powerful experience of your life. If you had known a few things like this about the jhana state, you would surely want to follow the Buddha immediately. The mundane world would no longer hold much attraction for you. Relationships, arts, music, films, sex, wealth, fame, all of these would no longer be important or appealing compared to the jhana states and the bliss of a liberated mind. It transcends any concept of happiness that you could understand as an ordinary person. When you are in the jhana state for a few hours, you could call yourself a mystic if you wish. You have had an experience that in religious traditions is often referred to as a mystical experience, far different from ordinary experiences. The Buddha referred to this state as uttarimanusa dhamma, meaning the state of a noble person, or referred to as the superior dharma. It is a state that transcends all ordinary experiences. The Buddha also sometimes regarded the happiness bliss of the jhana state as being quite similar to the happiness of enlightenment. Thus he called it sambodhi sukha, meaning the happiness of enlightenment or enlightenment bliss. This is a place where impurities cannot reach. Thus, this is also a place where Mara, the tempter of practitioners, cannot reach. You are awake and free during your time in jhana. To summarize, if you successfully practice these stages, then steps 1 to 12 of mindful breathing will guide you into the jhana states. Exiting from jhana. The remaining 4 steps of mindful breathing meditation in the Anapanasati Sutta are for meditators who have just exited from a jhana meditation state. First, after you exit from the first jhana state, you cannot help but think, "Oh wow, what was that?" Therefore, the first thing you need to do is to reflect back on that jhana state. You investigate and contemplate that experience, although you might rack your brain to find words to describe it. What you should do is to ask yourself, how did it arise? What special thing did I do to achieve it? How did I feel when I was in jhana? Why did it feel that way? How do you feel now? Why is it so blissfully happy? Reflecting on and contemplating such questions will give rise to profound insight wisdom. You would agree that the best word to describe why the jhana state arises is letting go. At this point, you have truly let go for the first time. It is not about letting go of the things you cling to and are attached to, but rather letting go of what causes attachment and clinging. That is, you let go of the doer, the agent, the volitional. You have let go of the self. It is difficult for a self to let go of the self, but through practicing these systematic meditation stages, you have genuinely achieved this, and that is true bliss. At this point, after reflecting on the experience in the jhana state, the practitioner can choose one of 2 paths to follow. Either transition to meditation on the 4 foundations of mindfulness, or continue directly into the remaining 4 steps of mindful breathing. Step 13. Contemplating impermanence. Initially, when we contemplate the term anicca, we often translate it as impermanence, but the meaning of this term is much broader and deeper. Its antonym is nikka in Pali, which refers to things that are constant and continuous. For example, in the Vinaya Pitaka, the food offered by a layperson on Tuesdays is referred to as nikka food. However, if there is an interruption, pause, or change in the offering day, that is anicca. The important point here is to reflect on the experience of deep concentration in jhana to see if what we often call permanence, the self, ego, is present in the jhana state. In the jhana state, the self has vanished. Note this. This recognition profoundly convinces you that the truth is there is no fixed permanent self, which is the truth of non-self. And this deep understanding of non-self can very likely propel you straight into the stream entry state. Step 14. Contemplating the dissolution of all things. If contemplating impermanence is unsuccessful, you should practice reflecting on dissolution. This term has two meanings, sometimes referred to as non-attachment, the lack of clinging to anything. But I prefer to use the meaning of dissolution. It is the moment when everything disappears. You have witnessed many things vanish as you enter the jhana state, including things that were once very dear to you, which you thought were an essential part of your identity, but they vanished in the jhana state. At that moment, you witnessed and experienced the dissolution of yourself. That is not your identity. The identity of the self is not real. Step 15. Contemplating cessation, nirvana. The third contemplation after exiting a jhana state should be the contemplation of cessation, of extinction. What was once there has now completely vanished. It has ceased, it is gone, and its place is now empty. This emptiness, the nature of non-self, can only be perceived through deep meditation. Many things of the world that you once thought were core and fundamental have now ceased, and you are in an entirely different space. This cessation is also the cessation of suffering, nirvana, in the Four Noble Truths. The end of suffering is called suffering cessation. The cessation of suffering is achieved through letting go. You have truly let go. The suffering has ended, or nearly 99% of it has ceased. So what remains? What is the opposite of dukkha? It is sukha, bliss, joy, happiness. The cessation of suffering is happiness. This is why you need to reflect on the fact that the jhana states are the happiest experiences you have ever had in this lifetime. And if you have gained some wisdom, you will see that this happiness arises because so much suffering has been ceased. You experience true happiness and clearly understand the reason for it. Imagine you have been suffering from a migraine for a long time. Someone gives you a newly invented pill to specifically treat your headache. You take it, and the pain disappears. How do you feel? You would likely feel light as a kite soaring in the wind. You would be visibly joyful. You might even cry tears of happiness. The cessation of pain is happiness. Why do all the little students jump for joy at the end of the exam season? Because they have just released the pressure and suffering of studying for their exams, and now the hardships have come to an end. Generally, happiness in life is merely a relative measure of the suffering that precedes it. Everything is relative, a matter of comparison. It's like when you finish paying off the mortgage on your house. You feel an indescribable joy and relief because the hardships of many years of hard work to earn money have finally ended. Step 16. Contemplating letting go and renunciation. The fourth and final contemplation in the Mindful Breathing Sutta is the contemplation of the beautiful term letting go, renunciation. In this context, the term patinasaga does not refer to letting go of things out there, but rather to letting go of things in here. Many times people view Buddhism as letting go of external things, but it means letting go of the inner world, renouncing the doer, the agent, the volitional actions, and even letting go of the knower, the mind, consciousness. If you observe carefully, you will see that what occurs in the jhana meditation state is not only about letting go of the external world, but also letting go of the internal world, especially letting go of the doer, the self, the will, the controlling agent, the creator of actions. This wisdom of letting go generates much happiness, purity, freedom, and true bliss. You have found the path to end all suffering. Summary of Chapter 7. Mindful of the Beautiful Breath. The steps above are how the Buddha described in the Mindful Breathing Sutta. It is a comprehensive practice curriculum, starting simply by sitting in a quiet place in a comfortable position, establishing mindfulness on what is before you, and simply observing the breath. Step by step, you know that these steps are achievable with your capabilities, and through these steps, you reach profound and happy states called jhana, the jhana meditation states. Immediately after you exit from these jhana meditation states, you will have 4 things to contemplate and be mindful of. 1. Anicca, impermanence, the non-constant, the uncertainty of things. 2. Viraga, the non-attachment, the dissolution of things. 3. Nirodha, the cessation of the self, the non-self. 4. Patanasaga, letting go of everything in the inner world. If you continuously contemplate these characteristics right after experiencing the jhana meditation state, wonderful things will continue to happen. I often say that the jhana state is like gunpowder and contemplation is like a matchstick. If you combine the two, there will be an explosion somewhere. It's just a matter of time. I wish for all of you to experience those wonderful explosions, what we call enlightenment.